We're here with Florida's governor. I call him America's governor, Ron DeSantis. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Mark. And before I forget, people can go to our website at rondesantis.com, rondesantis.com, if you're interested in helping us out. Thanks.
All right. You know, Governor, I watch these debates. I talk about these debates. I try to follow this election as closely as anybody can. And I have to say, you're running on your record as the governor of Florida, which is quite consequential. In fact, you've done so many things, and I am a resident of Florida as a result of you being governor of Florida, that you could barely list them all. And yet, Nikki Haley was governor for a long time in South Carolina, and she never runs on her record. She doesn't bring it up. If she does bring it up, she's very defensive about it. What do you make of that?
Well, look, Mark, at the end of the day, are you somebody that's producing results or are you just in office to bide time? And my view was when I sat down at the desk in the state capitol when I first took office as governor, I looked around the office and I said, I don't know what SOB is going to succeed me, but they're not going to have anything to do because I'm taking all the meat off the bone. I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to get all this stuff I promised done. And I've done that. Everything I promised I would do, I have delivered on. And these are very consequential things. As you mentioned, I think somebody like Nikki Haley, she's running away from her record as governor because her main task as governor, as she saw it, was to recruit investment from the Chinese Communist Party into South Carolina. She was the number one ranked governor at bringing in China into her state when she was governor, and she actually, South Carolina gave away land to the CCP 5 miles away from a military base for them to do a business venture there, and that was very consistent. She went to China with the World Economic Forum back in the day. She took other junkets there, and this was something she wrote a love letter to the ambassador when she was governor saying what a great friend China was. So that's very consistent. That was her worldview. That was what she did. Now she's trying to say she's a completely different person on all that, and she's trying to run away from it. She's also never gotten involved in a fight and actually fought on behalf of conservatives and won. I mean, for example, we've done things in Florida like protect girls and women from having boys and men go into their bathrooms and locker rooms. When she was governor of South Carolina, she killed a bill that was being proposed that would have provided those protections. And so this is just a pattern with kind of how she does things, doesn't stand up when it matters, is basically catering to the more liberal Republican donor class.
Now, this Republican donor class is interesting because I was watching one billionaire on TV, and it was bizarre. Sometimes I wonder how these guys get to be billionaires, but that's just me, Governor. Anyway, first he said he supported Trump. Then he supported you. Then he supported Tim Scott. Now he's supporting Nikki Haley. Isn't that kind of bizarre? I mean, do these billionaire donors, not all of them, but these, what is it? It's the flavor of the day, or are they all now, all the ruling class corporatists, are they now, and I'm going to suggest this is the case, the ruling class rhino corporatists are now betting on Nikki Haley. A lot of them are, no?
Well, I think there's a couple things. One, I think the fact that a guy like me, I'm not just saying this stuff on China. I've backed it up. We banned China from buying land in Florida since I've been governor. We have kicked them out of the universities, things like Confucius Institutes. So we're very serious about decoupling this country from China and obtaining our economic independence from China. There are people on Wall Street that don't like that. They've made a lot of money in China, and even though it's weakened our country, they want to continue doing that. So I do think that that's part of it. The other part of it, I think, is that they just want a candidate that they're able to control. So when they need something, they're able to say, you need to do this. Whereas with me, there have been articles written the whole year about how donors are frustrated that I'm standing on principle, such as when we're standing up to Disney about keeping sexualization of our curriculum out of Florida schools, particularly for these young grades. I mean, I have a 6, a 5, and a 3-year-old at home that my wife and I are raising, and it is totally inappropriate to tell a first grader that they were born in the wrong body or that their gender is a choice. And so when the left is trying to do that, we're fighting back in Florida. We're standing up for parents. Disney fights us. I think a lot of these guys expect you to just bend the knee because it's a big, powerful corporation. I will not do that. I'm not going to subcontract out my leadership to a woke corporation based in Burbank, California. So we stood up, we fought back, and we won that battle. And I definitely think a lot of them do not like that. So, but here's the thing. Leadership's just about doing what you think is right for the right reason. Let the chips fall where they may. These donors, fine, they can support who they want. But what I find is over the long term, people do gravitate to leadership, and when they see that you're willing to follow through true north, there's a lot of support out there. So do not try to twist yourself into a pretzel just to please some of these guys.
But I noticed the Gerald Ford wing of the Republican Party is kind of piling up on you. The Chris Christies, the Sununus, the Peggy Noonans, and I'll say the Haleys and so forth. Why is he fighting these culture wars? Didn't the culture wars come to you? It's not like you were looking for the culture wars. CRT, DEI, ESG, the whole alphabet soup, the brainwashing of our children, the sexualization of our children. Disney, Nikki Haley said, come to South Carolina. That's when I finally said, wait a minute, what's that all about? So in other words, they are not prepared in their own states. They are not prepared at the national level to take on this cultural rot that's taking place.
Well, I think what's happened is the left, anytime they can get a hold of an institution, they are going to do that, and then they are going to manipulate that institution to be able to advance their agenda. So it used to be the case back in the day where corporations weren't pursuing any political agendas. They were basically just trying to earn profit for their shareholders and return value for their shareholders. And so, yeah, I mean, you probably would just say, you know what, you guys do your job. But when you're in a situation where you have these asset managers like BlackRock using these things like so-called ESG, they're trying to impose an agenda on society without our consent. They are trying to change our society. They are trying to undermine our rights with their agenda. So as a leader, you can't just put your head in the sand and say, oh, well, we're just not going to get involved in that. You got to fight back. You got to defend your folks against these aggressions. So people say somehow, oh, fight culture war. Like, look, they're coming after us.
Governor Ron DeSantis, you've taken on Iran. You've taken on Hamas. Even though you're a governor, you decided to go your own way on these vaccines. You decided to go your own way on immigration with respect to Biden. I mean, Florida has a significant population, very significant economy. Now, you signed into law today, as I understand it, the biggest expansion of Iran sanctions in America. You've also passed a spending initiative in order to protect these Jewish day schools and religious institutions generally, as well as synagogues. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, we've always had, since I've been governor, strong sanctions against Iran. But in the aftermath of the October 7th attacks, we looked and said, clearly these attacks would not have happened had Biden not relieved sanctions and allowed the oil sales to Iran. Any money they get, they're going to plow into terrorism. So is there more that we can do from the state perspective? And look, we're one state, but if Florida were its own country, we'd be the 13th biggest economy in the world. So we do carry some weight. So we work with the legislature to do a special session of the legislature, expanded the sanctions in every direction we could to try to choke off any money going from Florida to Iran in any way that we can think of creatively. And I hope other states will do the same. Obviously, Biden should be doing way more at the federal level. He can choke off money going into the regime if he wanted to, but he has this delusion that somehow they're going to end up doing a deal with Iran. Now, we also did the protection, additional funding, and we've been doing this since I've been governor, protecting Jewish day schools. In the aftermath of the October 7th attack, we had state resources dispatched to all Jewish areas of interest, synagogues, Jewish day schools, museums, to guard against anybody that wanted to try to attack those institutions. And then what I've done at the university is we have the Students for Justice for Palestine, which has allied align itself with Hamas, and so we've delisted them. We're fighting with the universities. We're going to win that, but they don't have a right to be a student group at our universities and get tax dollars if they're allied with Hamas. It's a terrorist group, and we can't provide material support to terrorism. And then just as a presidential candidate, I mean, I was the first one to say, you see these pro-Hamas demonstrations around the country, and it's really chilling to see what they're doing, taking down the American flag, burning the American flag, putting up a Palestinian flag. And I'm just thinking to myself, some of these people, and there was an article about MIT, all the demonstrations were being led by foreign students. So if you're here on a foreign student visa, foreign student, you have no right to be here. It's a privilege to study here. If you're making common cause with Hamas, as president, I'm canceling your visa and I'm sending you home. We just cannot put up with this. We can't end up having this country be like Europe with what it's did, with how it's let all these people in that don't want to assimilate, that hate Israel, hate Jews. I've also said no Gaza refugees into this country. Mark, you know they're taught to hate Jews from a very young age. Israel is not even on the map in the textbooks. The kids are taught that Israel doesn't even have a right to exist. And so why would we want to import 300,000 people from the Gaza Strip like some of these lefties want to do and dump them into our country? That's not good for the American people. So we can't be politically correct about this stuff. We need to defend our own country, and we cannot allow this to continue the way it's gone.
And by the way, as a footnote, didn't you get some initial pushback from Nikki Haley, and then she backed off on that issue?
Right. I mean, I think her words were, when confronted with what I said, she said that America has, quote, always been able to separate a terrorist from a so-called freedom fighter, and, quote, that's what we need to do here. And so people said, well, gee, she's opening the door to vet these Gazans and wants to bring them in. Then she said, no, she's never done it. You know, the media claims that she never wanted Gaza refugees. But why would you be wanting to vet these people unless you're going to import them? There'd be no reason to be vetting or talk about separating terrorists from freedom fighters, and that's what she did. That was her instinct when she was first confronted with my position that we just shouldn't take any, period.
You know, Governor, I understand why the Democrat Party ruling class, I understand why MSNBC, CNN, and the other reprobates, and I understand why some people believe that immigration is about foreigners wanting to come to the United States. But historically, from our founding almost up to recent times, slightly before our current times, immigration was a privilege, and you don't get to come into the United States unless it is known that you're going to contribute to this culture and this society, let alone be hostile to it, let alone march against it and so forth. And yet the hardcore left, whether it's the media, the Democrat Party, and quite frankly, corporatists and others, they don't seem to get it. Immigration isn't a freedom that's accorded overseas to anybody who wants to come here. The goal is our representatives are supposed to represent we, the people, and people are supposed to come here if they will improve our society, not the other way around, correct?
100%. It's all about whether it benefits the American people or not. And of course, throughout our history, we've obviously had times where the country has benefited from people coming here who've worked hard and really embraced the American way of life. There's no question about that. But if you don't believe in our founding principles and you do not want to assimilate into this country, you should not be let into this country. And I think what Europe has done over the last 10, 15 years is they've imported a lot of people who do not want to assimilate into those societies, who do not share the values of those societies, but are bringing their own culture, a foreign culture, and they're replicating that in these European places. You look at Germany, they have more anti-Semitism today than at any time since Hitler, and it's not because a lot of the native Germans, a lot of it is done through the immigration that they've done to import people that have those views. So we've got to get real here in the United States. We've got to stop being politically correct. You don't have a right to come to this country, and if you're not somebody that wants to embrace our way of life and embrace our founding principles, then we will take a pass on having you come to this country.
This is so crucially important, and yet it's considered so controversial by the phony media and the Democrat Party and their Marxists in the squad and so forth. Look at this, they're discriminating. Let me tell you, I just want people to understand. No country is compelled to bring people into the country from cultures or backgrounds or educational systems that are not going to be able to work within the framework of our constitutional republic. That is national suicide. Everybody's understood that. You know, the late Governor Lamb of Colorado, he was a big liberal, he was a Democrat, and he gave one of the finest speeches, not just of a Democrat, ever. If you want to destroy America, you do exactly what we're doing when it comes to immigration. And so few people are willing to stand up to it because they come under attack. You came under immediate attack, didn't you?
Yeah, but here's the thing: we got to get beyond that. If you anytime you stand up for the right thing right now, they're going to attack you. That's just par for the course. So part of the reason we're in this mess is because a lot of Republicans have been more interested in being politically correct, and they've been more interested in getting plaudits from the media than they are about doing what's right. But time is running out for this country to reverse course on a whole host of issues, but particularly on this issue. And yes, the border is a major issue. Yes, we got to stop the invasion there. Yes, terrorists have come into this country. The media, when I said that debate, they tried to make a big deal about it. Mark, there's 8 million people. You don't think that terrorists are taking advantage of this? Of course they are. Give me a break. So we know that. But we also have to look at the legal immigration. We have to look at who we're importing, and we have to be very smart about that. So we will do that, and there'll be a sea change, when I get in with respect to immigration. And it's just common sense. And honestly, like the people that came at Ellis Island, if they had presented as somebody that rejected America, the Americans back then would have sent them back home. They would have put them back on the boat and send them back home. There would have been no questions asked. Everybody agreed that you had to want to be an American, and you wanted that you had to aspire to assimilate into our culture.
Last question, Governor. Don't you find it amazing that there's absolutely no curiosity by these various radical left-wing media outlets, these corporatists, about who these people are in the streets, who are saying the most hateful things about Jews in the United States, and how they're getting organized and how they're getting money? I don't know of many that have actually dug into this. Do you?
No, and I mean, you think about it. If there's like a Republican candidate running for office and is doing a rally, the media will try to find anybody in that crowd that they can find that says something off color or whatever, and then they'll try to expose and they'll try to smear. And they go through great lengths to be able to do things like that, as a matter of course, when it comes to anyone associated, with a Republican. Now you have some of the most nasty, anti-Semitic violence. And honestly, I was somebody who knew that there was problems with this, but a month and a half ago, I would not have thought it was even close to this bad.
I agree.
So it's something like we've really not seen in our country in recent history, and yet they don't care. They're not running down any of this. In fact, some of these college students, where some of these businesses said, we're not going to hire you, the media sided with the pro-Hamas demonstrators. They acted like that was some great injustice. I'm sorry. If you want to apply for a job with me and you have on your resume that you're out there celebrating one of the worst terrorist attacks in history and making common cause with Hamas, you are rejected. We are not even going to consider you at that point. And that is a totally appropriate response given what happened in Israel and given the conduct that we're seeing in the streets from some of these people.
Well, given that the New York Times hired a man who was celebrating Hitler as one of their photojournalists, then when it was found out, dropped that person and then rehired that person, really a few weeks ago, as the New York Post pointed out, I don't think most of the media which covered up the Holocaust has any moral standing to do what it does, quite frankly. And it's amazing to me that so few people actually resign who find, as more of this information comes out about the New York Times and the Washington Post and CNN and MSNBC and all of them, that more people don't resign. They just go along with the playbook. Anyway, Governor, I want to thank you very, very much. Again, if people want to help, where do they go? RonDeSantis.com, RonDeSantis.com. Thanks so much, Mark. Best to your family and stay safe. God bless you, sir.